Oh yeah, I did. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I appreciate that very much. I'm the youngest of 5 boys. Ron happens to be the guy in the middle. And we're glad he's that way because he's been the spoiled one of the family. He's gotten away with everything he picked up from his older brothers, and things we couldn't do, he could do. So we have to work on that a little bit. There's one thing I need to tell you about him that you probably have never heard. His philosophy of government and his conservative nature is a little bit left to me. So you have to understand where I'm coming from. I try to keep him in line for the last 35 years. I think I did a pretty good job. Now I have 2 brothers that are ministers. So I feel I have enough authority to tell a joke about ministers. There's a minister that got assigned to a congregation, and when he got there in his first Sunday service, after there was singing and hymns, and after there was scriptures and prayers, he got the opportunity to speak. And he was doing fine because they heard he was an excellent teacher. He got about halfway through his sermon and he got to a statement, "Behold, I come forth." And lo and behold, he forgot what he was going to say next. So being a Dale Carnegie graduate, he was taught that when you can't remember what you want to say next, repeat what you said before. So a little bit louder and a little more boisterous, he says, "Behold, I come forth." And he still couldn't remember. So he grabbed the podium, shouted a little louder and says, "Behold, I come forth." And lo and behold, the podium and him landed in the front pew on the lap of an elderly woman. And he got up and he apologized. And the elderly lady says, "Sir, you don't need to apologize. You warned me 3 times, and I didn't have sense enough to get out of the way." You may wonder why I'm sitting down. There happens to be a general, long retired, that had a line in his closing statement to the world. He says, "Old generals or old soldiers never die, they just fade away." Well, there's one out there for accountants, which I am. It says, "Old accountants never die, they just lose their balance." So to make sure I stay balanced, I'm sitting down. The other thing I was taught in Dale Carnegie was, try to get to know your audience. I want everybody to raise their hand that works for the government. Gee whiz, I'm in a minority. Patricia and I work for the government. We spend 7 months out of the year so I can pay my taxes to the government. We're part of the 49%ers. Because there's 51%ers out there that's taken from government. Okay? Now, everybody's heard of an investment or mortgages or car loans that are upside down. I happen to believe we've got a government that's upside down. When 51% are taking and only 49% are contributing, the Pelosi's and the Reeds of the world don't seem to get it. But we can't keep this up. It's got to change. The second question I want to ask of the audience, and this is a little more specific, is there anybody in this audience that works directly for one of the three-letter agencies of government? FBI, CIA, CID, IRS, TSA, or HSA? Anybody out there? Please stand up if you are, because I want to recognize you and I want to welcome you. You're probably here under duress, but guess what? We've got a message. We've started a revolution and we're going to finish it. And we're going to start right here. And a big thing about this revolution is the four-letter words in revolution that is called love. And we have a revolution that's going to change our country back to its constitutional nature and back to loving freedom and liberty. That's what we're here about today. When I was asked to speak today, I was concerned about the audience. I'm no longer concerned about that, but I want to have a few minutes that all those people out there that are my age, that are not electronically savvy, to get out your piece of paper and lead pencil. I want you to write 4 things down. The rest of you gurus, get out your iPads, your iPods, your notebooks, your cell phones, and anything else, because I want you to record or put down 4 things that I want to talk about, and I've got about 30 seconds for each one of them. The first thing I want you to write down is puregoldpages.com. The second thing I want you to put in your iPads is the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. The next thing I want you to write in that iPad is the Gold Bullion Act of 1985 and the Silver Eagle Act of 1986. I want you to seal them in your iPads, Google them, read them, and understand them. And I'm going to tell you why I think this should be done. 6 or 8 years ago, I got a call from an attorney who was defending a gentleman in federal court that was accused of not paying proper taxes. And at the time he hired me, he says, I want you to prepare the tax return for my client. I thought, oh, that's a pretty good deal. I'll be glad to do that. He says, but there's one thing. I says, what's that? He says, he has 2 types of income. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, for the first half a year, he was under a gold clause contract and received constitutional money. The second half of the year, he was under a Federal Reserve note contract and he received money. I said, well, that's not difficult. He said, yeah, but there's a catch to that. I said, oh, now we're getting down to it. He says the judge in this guy's case has ordered the defendant to file his return using a commodity value for the lawful money he received and not its face value. I said, oh, okay, I'll do it that way. So I prepared a return for him. It was an independent, so we had a Schedule C and paid 1 and 2 of a tax return. And I sent it to the defense attorney. And he calls me up and he says, but you didn't sign this return. I said, well, I can't sign that return. It's not truthful. And professionally, I got to prepare a return that I believe to be correct. He says, okay, prepare me a second return. So I said, okay, I will. I did a spreadsheet, first half of the year in constitutional money, second half of the year in Federal Reserve money, and I combined the two, and I signed that return. Now, the attorney's got the problem. His client is under court order to sign the first return, but I wouldn't sign it because I didn't think it was correct. I signed the second return, but if the client signed it, he could be held in contempt in court and thrown in jail. I said, what are we going to do about that? Or the attorney said that. I said, I got an idea. Let's send both returns to the district director of the Internal Revenue Service and let them tell us which one he should sign. Now that's been about 7, maybe 8 years ago, and for some reason, the intelligent people and the legal people of the Internal Revenue Service has yet to reply to the request. I wonder why. Kind of interesting, isn't it? Now, I want to turn around and mention one other thing as it relates to the 4 items. When I filed the second return, I added 9 pages of authority and of support for my reason for the second return. And I've had experience in the past with the service where when they process returns, they have a tendency to have less qualified people process those returns, and inadvertently, some of the support pages end up being missing. And in this case, since he was in federal court on trial, I wanted to make sure that the return I prepared was the return that might come back into the courtroom. So I did the only prudent thing I felt available. Front page of the 1040, I said page 1 of 13. Turned over the back side, I said page 2 of 13. Schedule C was 3 of 13, and the back side of Schedule C was 4 of 13. Then I listed my support pages. I wanted to make sure nobody lost them. And as I told you, we have yet to hear from them. And in his appeals court case, I was asked to testify, not in appeal, but in a regular court case, I was asked to testify about the return I prepared. So the defense attorney called me up on the stand, talked to me and asked me questions. I think I was drilled for about 15 minutes from him basically telling him my background and my experience. Then it came time for the cross-examination by the AUSA attorney. And I thought, uh-oh, here it goes. And he spent about a half hour trying to refute my stands that I had prepared and used for the return. And finally, when he didn't seem to be getting anywhere, he says, I have one last question. And he said, why did you prepare 2 tax returns? And I said, well, that's rather a dumb question. And I looked at the jury as I said, that's rather a dumb question, but I'm going to answer it anyway. And he looked at me and got a little upset. I said, sir, trade places with this guy down there in the defense chair as the defendant. Would you not want all the ammunition available to you to defend yourself in terms of your position? That's why I did it. And then I said, oh, by the way, we sent it to the IRS and they still haven't signed it. And that's recorded history in that trial. The point being is, I believe the Tax Reform Act, or pardon me, the Gold Bullion Act of 1985 and the Silver Eagle Act of 1986 gave each one of us the opportunity to deal in constitutional money. Now, the guy I was defending believed it also. And there have been guys since then that have been taken to court, and they still believe it. One part of those two passages by Congress says, meant to demand. And we know today that's not happening. But I believe that's opened the door. It's a matter of whether you people want to crawl through or walk through that door. Now, Federal Reserve Act of 1913. Why is this important? You want to look it up and read it. And I'm going to have you write down 5 words that define, pick this up, that define this instrument. There are 5 words, and you need to write it down. That instrument is called a Federal Reserve Accounting Unit Dollar. I'm not going to explain anything more to you, but underline the first letter in each one of those words, and you'll find out what that is. Now, I asked you initially to write down puregoldpages.com. This is an effort to put together a coalition of people who believe that we should deal in constitutional money. What you may not know, there are already 14 states that have introduced legislation to allow the people in that state to deal in constitutional dollars. There's one state that has already passed, the rest are still in the hopper to be worked on this year. We need the other 36 states to get on board. Now, PureGoldPages.com is going to be an avenue to put together people who believe in that philosophy and who are willing to work and help to get these laws passed in all the states in the United States. We can return to constitutional dollars if you people want it. And that's what it's going to take. Now, if you turn around, she's going to hold up, and somewhere in Daily P.A.U.L, you'll see my brother having held up $1. That dollar is minted by the United States government, and as part of my support for the tax return I prepared, there's an 1899 Supreme Court case that says a minted coin by our government is to be recorded and used at the value imprinted on the coin. That value on that coin says $1. It is $1. Now, if you do anything else, or you don't use it as a commodity price, you got to understand the risk. But I'm telling you, based upon the laws, based upon Supreme Court cases, that still holds true. Now, next to me is Patricia. She has another organization that's going to help ignite this movement, and I'm going to let her talk since I've talked too much.
decades of a great example and a great teacher. If the people in this country don't take their liberty and prosperity back, they have nobody to blame but themselves. What we're bringing to you today is a vehicle for you to get on that and go, okay? Get the job done. Nobody up here is saying we want to be a leader. We want you to exercise your individual sovereignty. What I want to ask you to do is we're looking for representatives from each state. There are sign-up forms over at that table where it says Oath Keeper. To the right of that, there are forms there to sign. If you own a business and you would like to have the ability in your state to accept constitutional money and do exchanges in constitutional money, we want your name, your business name, and your email address on that list, because we're going to take it, we're looking for people to take it to your state legislators and say to your state legislators, the businesses in your state want this, because that's always their excuse. How will these guys employ it? Do they really want it? Oh, I don't think they really want it. Okay? Now there's another sign-up form over there. It's for Campaign for Constitutional Money. That is the grassroots machine. That's you, and that's your responsibility for your own freedom and your own prosperity. On the website, Campaign for Constitutional Money, you will find materials available to take to your state legislators. And that also is intended to be a forum so that states can communicate with each other about what kind of obstacles you're running into and how we get around them. Now understand that constitutional money is the most important issue because there is not one aspect of your life or government that it does not manipulate and destroy when the currency is being debased. It manipulates your law enforcement, it manipulates the military, it manipulates the preachers in the pulpits. It has destroyed homes when it takes more than one income to support a family. And by destroying homes, they have destroyed communities. And in destroying homes and communities, they have destroyed the American culture. That's it. So we're going to see today how many people are really serious about their liberty and prosperity. We want to let the legislators know that there are businesses in their state that want this, and we want the grassroots activists who sign up and say, yes, I'll take the information to my legislators. And that's what we're looking for over there, okay?
Thank you, thank you.